Today, I have the great pleasure of interviewing Gay Owens of HSBC Mortgage. Gary is currently operating in the northern part of New York, and we'll talk about his geographic distribution a little bit. But Gary, before we discuss your professional career, your contemporaries are always interested in knowing someone's background before they got into business and really how they got into business. And everybody has a different story, as I've learned. So how about a little bit about your story? And before we get into it, let me just ask you, for the record, what volumes did you do in 99 and 98? I know you were in the top one-third of 1%.
In 99, I believe...
Yeah, ballparks are fine here.
I believe it originated about 64 million.
Mm-hmm. What about 98?
98 was probably around, I think it was like 49 million.
Mm-hmm. And it's quite extraordinary, and I'm kind of getting off the main point here. It's quite extraordinary because the average loan amounts up where you are rather small,
right.
And that translates down here. I'm interviewing somebody on about 2 days.
If you look at the top 200 number of loans, I think it was 43rd in the country.
No, I have no doubt.
Yeah, it was 494 closed units. Actually, it was a lot more that originated. Just they all didn't close that month or that year of 99. But a lot of units.
Yeah, right, exactly. If you had been down in the Washington metropolitan area, some of the wealthy areas, that probably would have translated in close to 150 million.
Probably.
But what's money in this business? You know.
Right.
Anyway, how about a little background on yourself before you got into business, and
sure,
maybe where you went to school and grew up? And
yeah, actually, I've been born and raised in the Buffalo area. Actually, Williamsville, which is a suburb of Buffalo. I grew up there with the high school out here in Williamsville, graduated there in 1978, and from there I went to a school locally, actually just outside of Rochester, which is called Brockport State University, which is a state school. And kind of interesting story there is didn't really know what I wanted to go into. You know, you're 17, 18 years old, you're not really sure what you want to do. And my brother had been going to Brockport State, and he was in computer science, and I really had no clue what I wanted to do at the time. So I started taking computer science courses and wasn't too bad at it. I was pretty good at it. And actually graduated in 82 with a computer science degree. Wow. Which is a completely different way of how I got to doing what I am now. It's a very interesting story. And I was in computers. Actually, I've been in banking in my entire life. Started in computers at a bank locally called M&T Bank here. I was
sure,
computers.
Very familiar with it. Knew some of the people there.
Probably there for about 4 years in computers, doing computer programming, that kind of thing, and marketing and research, that kind of thing. I was doing kind of their fourth generation language programming stuff. But I was so outgoing that I was not one of your. I just didn't really like programming. I liked going out and meeting people, that kind of thing. And I knew that eventually I wanted to do something on the lines of marketing or sales as I was getting into some of the marketing stuff there. But it's very difficult if you put on your resume that you're in computer science and try to get a sales job. That perception is very difficult for people to understand. They just don't think that a guy who's in computers has any skills that you can sell or do anything.
Absolutely.
And it was very difficult for me to get out of that box. It took me almost 10 years to get out of it. From 82 to 92, you know, actually the very last 3 years that I was trying to get out of computers altogether. I didn't want anything to do with it. I knew I went into computers for the wrong reasons, I guess, because I knew I could get a job after college, but it wasn't really what I was interested in.
It's interesting because I sold computers for IBM when I got out of Georgetown. Well, actually, when I got out of the service, so I can relate very much to that. I died on the do loop and decided that programming, was not for me.
Exactly, and I knew that actually very quickly. But it's like you said, it's so difficult to get out of that stereotype. People just think that if you're a computer person, you're pretty much like a conehead, I guess. That's what they used to call us. So back in 1992, I really, really started trying to get out, and I had resumes everywhere, and nothing was happening. So I knew, and I knew that sales is where I wanted to be. I knew that's where I wanted to be. Selling anything, I just wanted someone to give me a shot.
Wow.
And what I did is And I knew that sales you could do at the bank. I said, well, if I'm going to do this, I probably have to do it where I am, which was at the time I had moved over to HSBC, which was actually Marine Millen at the time.
Sure.
And I said, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to have to do it here because they're the only one going to give me a shot at this thing. No one on the outside would give you a shot. It was just impossible. So I knew there were certain areas I wanted to be in. Mortgage was definitely one of them, and because I knew what kind of money these guys were making because I was in payroll. That was one thing, and I knew that the money was good here, and the money they were making was very, very good. So I concentrated on that area as well as other parts of the sales area, the other marketing and sales areas in the bank. And it always seemed that they used to have the internal postings, and I always used to go at them. I never would get it. And the first thing they would say, you got to get some experience. And I said, experience? How am I going to get experience? So what I did is I used to be at a different bank before I went to actually Marine. I was at Gold Dome Really Credit Corp. I don't know if you're familiar.
Yeah.
with that.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Who are actually no longer in business now.
Right.
But these guys in mortgage, they formed their own company called Power Funding Group. And I knew some of these guys, and I called them. I said, listen, I'd like to do this on a part-time basis. And they said, well, it's really not a part-time job, but I talked them into letting me do this part-time. So they taught me what to do. I was over there probably for 6-7 months just doing loans and stuff like that, learning the business on my own, you know what I mean? And the bank didn't know anything about this. And I knew I had to get that experience. If there was another posting coming up, that I could go in and say, yes, now I got some experience. And it was difficult because I was doing 2 jobs, and I was doing it on the weekends. It was tough, but I knew I had to do it if I was going to move into that area. So eventually, finally, a posting did come up. I did take the interview, and I finally got the job because of the experience that I did on my own. And basically, the rest is history. I really took off with this thing once that happened.
Well, I can tell you right now, you were a very unusual story and very motivated.
Very.
From the get-go. There's not too many people that know that they want to be in sales, because sales can be, first off, it can be very intimidating. It's
right.
a reject. I mean, I can give you all the reasons
right.
why people would normally take that kind of mental, process
sure.
to the goal.
Right. It was difficult. I mean, I was going into a commission job. It was very difficult. I knew I wanted to do it, but it was very difficult to make the decision, because when they did offer to me, I said, now what am I getting into? You know what I mean? Because I'm going from a job that I've got some security, I got a good paying job, whatever it was, going to a full commission job. I have a wife that didn't work, I have 2 children, I have a house, mortgage, you know what I mean? Everything. Going to a full commission job was not an easy thing to do when you're at 32 years old. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Usually you do that when you don't have any children or anything, and you get into these kind of things when you don't really have anything like that. So again, it was scary, but I took off with it. I mean, it was just from day one. I think I was in the office for 3 days, and I took my first mortgage.
Wow.
And didn't really, even though I had some experience, I really didn't know the business, if you know what I mean, because I didn't really. I took a couple of loans, but I didn't really know what I was doing until I actually got into this thing.
Which kind of leads me, it's kind of a prompt in your first job. It's usually my first question, because I think a lot of people are interested in this. And how did you get your initial training? And that can run the gamut from, having a mentor to help you to, they giving you a book and then kick you out a week later.
Pretty much. Yeah, exactly. I mean, when I got in there, I did have I wouldn't call it training, but it was someone who I was basically under their wing, I guess, for the first, I'd say the first couple of weeks. I just basically followed them and didn't really do anything but that. Follow them on their appointments, follow them, just took a lot of notes, just exactly find out what they were doing, and kind of their style, because everyone that develops their own style in this thing. And I had to figure out how I was going to do mine, and that's basically what I did. But as far as training, they basically definitely just gave you a book and just said, here, come into appointments, listen to our spiel, and here's your closing call. This is how you explain it. Here's all the forms, and basically that was it for 2 weeks, and I was on my own. And actually I ran with it. I really did. Even though I didn't really know what I was talking about on some of the stuff, I just made sure that if I had any questions. I had a great staff there. Like Steve was there. Steve helped me quite a bit. Steve Mendelson,
sure.
who you've interviewed,
yeah.
was very helpful to me, because he's been in the business 2 years before I was even in it. And he was there for me for anything I needed, which was great. So the key is a lot of support. If you're on your own, you don't have a lot of that support where you can go to people, it will be very difficult to succeed in this business.
And I agree. And not only that, it's even with that support, it's difficult. I mean, getting out there in that real world, and it's for most people, they really cannot handle it. I mean, there's a lot of burnout, and I mean, as you well know, for every 3-4 people starting this business, you're really lucky to have somebody, one person that kind of sticks it through and then becomes successful.
Right. Steve was great with that. There was a couple other individuals that helped me out quite tremendously. Whenever I needed anything, I was there. They were there for me, which was great. And also that I became really proficient at the phones. I was very, very good as a phone person because I didn't really have any offices. So when I actually first started in my job, I was supposed to take over a territory up in Niagara County, which is a territory north of the city. Mm-hmm. But at the time I got in here, that person was still there. They were supposed to be promoted to a different position. Well, they had not promoted her yet, so I didn't really have any realtors. They didn't give me anything yet. So I had to, what I had to do, and I knew this, I said, how am I going to get business? I stuck to that phone. And I was so good at that phone. If someone called for a wrong number, they were in looking for a refinance or a purchase.
What did you do? What did you do? And I think this is the first part here where we're really, I'm very interested in focusing on that because I think some of the new people that are going to listen to this interview and are wondering the same things that you did at that particular time, they're looking for how they're going to get their business in, especially since refis have died out and they're just getting started. So what if you kind of focus in on that a little bit?
Yeah, I tell you, if you could perfect your phone skills, I tell you, you'd be amazed how much business you can get off the phone. And it just amazes me. Even today, I don't take as much phone time because I'm just so busy because I've been in this long enough that I don't really need the phones anymore. But when I first started, it was like my lifeline. It was very, very, very important for me to make sure that when I was scheduled for any time on the phones, I was there, and I really, really went at it and made sure that that when someone had called in, because you got to remember, someone's calling you, they're calling for a reason. They're either going to refinance, they're looking for pre-approval of a purchase. I mean, that you've got an opportunity to get that person in to you, either in your office or get your name to them or your phone number and get that person pre-approved or whatever they need. I mean, you've got such an opportunity there.
If I could interpolate that, to me, that is a little bit of the sales philosophy that you always have a sale when someone calls in or you meet somebody, and the only thing you can do is lose it.
Exactly.
But you have it when it comes in.
That's right.
And so now the issue is, are you going to lose it?
Right. And I do this to the new people. I mean, I actually just gave a presentation to our sales staff a couple of weeks ago based on sales skills on the phone. And I told them, I said, you're really doing yourself a disservice if someone calls in and asks for you an interest rate and you give them the interest rate and you hang up. What has that done for you? Nothing. That person's obviously in calling you for a reason. And I hear it all the time. I'm in the office and I hear people give a rate and they hang up. And I say, that is crazy to do that. They're obviously in the business to do something, and for you to just stop at an interest rate and let them off that phone is crazy. So again, that's the kind of thing that I try to instill in the new people that come to our office, is try to get them to understand that yes, you'll get busier, but the phone is really, the skills that you get on the phone can get you a lot of business, and I really believe that, and I am the person that could tell you that because I started with the phone and really ran with it.
I think it's interesting because when people do start off, they're looking to get those first deals, and it depends when you get into business. Some people have been very fortunate that I've interviewed where they've gotten in, right at the height of a refi boom,
sure,
and they get that money coming in within 30, 45 days, and they make that transition. Right. On the other hand, I interview an equal number of people who came in, during tough times or going into tough times, and where it became much more difficult to get in. And so I think, having phone techniques and things like that are ancillary to maybe calling on realtors, sure, I think they have value.
Right. And again, I think also, phone's one way of getting your business, but I like to call it, realtors are a very important part of this business, obviously, as you know. But I try not to concentrate so much on the realtors because sometimes it can be very fickle, and you're only as good as your last deal sometimes. That's the way I think.
Tell me about it.
You know what I mean? So I like to go out what I call outside the box. And outside the box to me is family and friends and acquaintances that you get business from just for doing a good job and knowing people, financial planners and attorneys and things of that nature. Those people, CPAs, I mean, I don't tell how many CPAs I deal with. I mean, when they do people's taxes every year, and I get so many refis just from that. It's just incredible. It's just, I call it outside the box.
Well, I think that's a very important part of the business.
Right.
And I would like to focus on that, but not right now. I'd actually like to kind of flip back a little bit, ask you what types of loans that you originate, and then actually I'd like to start off by focusing inside the box with realtors and how you started with realtors and how you got going, because I suspect that the most important part of the interview here is going to be focused on how you got business outside the box, because the people, the listeners that listen to this, everybody, for the most part, deals a little bit with realtors, not everybody.
Absolutely.
But it's the outside the box stuff that I think is going to hold the most interest. But so let's kind of flip it back in. And when you started off, how did you go about getting business from realtors? And were you dealing in a VA FHA market or conventional?
Yeah, it pretty much was probably more of an FHA market, because the territory that I had, and I still have today, was primarily a lower income type area up at Niagara Falls area, which is
I know exactly where it is.
Well, so with the Niagara Falls area, Niagara County, so more like an FHA, affordable housing type programs. But there are some real nice areas up in Niagara County, up in Lewiston, New York, which are more high end. So I really concentrated on realtors, again, in both sectors, basically. There's a lot of realtors up in the Lewiston area that are homes that are well over 200,000, which obviously I wanted to go after right away. And I really did. I was very, very out of face or out of mind. You know what I mean? That saying, if you're not seen, you will not get any deals. And that is so true. Even today, if I'm not in there as much, you wonder why you don't get some deals out of certain realtors. You're not around as much. And I try to do it every week now. I get up in people's offices, and at the time when I was first starting, you have to be there at least 2-3 times a week, walking in those offices, and you got to walk in the times that they're there. I think that's a key. Walking in at 6 o'clock at night is not going to help you. It's basically walking in on the day that they've got sales meetings. You walk in at that time, or right before, or just after, when they're all there. Even on Saturdays. Saturdays was a good day I used to go in too, because a lot of people are in on Saturdays and stuff like that. So
how did you handle the objection that comes from everybody? I'm sure you had a select number of offices where you had secretaries in front, or even the managers sometimes, that were an obstacle. The old "leave my realtors alone, they're busy."
You know what? Believe it or not, I would, because again, I think I have a good outward personality. I would try to polite conversation, I guess you would call it. Start with that. Bring them something. Donuts, anything, something that you would give to them, and then it's tough for them to say no in front of your face like that. It really is. That was one of the ways I would try to get around it. Not all the time, but a lot of times it would. Especially the secretary is the key to get around. Trying to get by her was always difficult. But I think if coming in every day, talking to her, and if you relieve something or bring pens or whatever you have to do. Or you got a new program or something. A lot of times they would let you buy, and I really didn't have a lot of rejection in that area, and still don't today. I seem to be able to get by those people pretty good, and it's because I think that being able to talk and have polite conversation with people, and always have something to give out. You should really. We'll probably get by those people pretty regularly.
Did you start off with getting a lot of your business from just a couple realtors or a couple of offices?
Yes, I concentrated on a couple of offices because you could put yourself too thin. You know what I mean? I think if you concentrate on the offices you really want to get into and really go after those, that's what I did. I felt I zeroed in on a couple of offices I really wanted to get into, and kept going back to them, because if you're spreading yourself too thin all over the place, you're not going to be able to get back to those offices 2 or 3 times a week. So that's what I tried to do. I tried to get into the offices that I really wanted to get into, high-profile offices, and be seen. That's the key. Be seen. And again, know your products. Know what you're talking about. That's another key. If you tell somebody something and they call you on it, you better make sure what you gave them information-wise was what is true. So
I think we all have horror stories. I was relating, which I won't repeat here, but was relating my personal horror story to somebody I interviewed a couple days ago, where I did just that. I tried to BS my way through, got caught big time, and that person, and I now remember her name. Her name was Joy Schoen, and she worked out of the McLean, Long, and Foster office. We always were on very cordial, even nice relations, but she never, ever gave me a deal.
Right.
And rightly so. Historically looking back.
Sure. It is. I think it's so important to know the products. There's just no way. I mean, you will get called upon it, just like you said.
Well, did you use rate sheets in those days effectively, or did you kind of dispense with them?
I don't like rate sheets. I just don't think they look at them. I think if they're interested in I think they're more interested in products than price at this time. I mean, we're in a more of a rate conscious market now.
Sure.
But I don't know. I mean, everyone throws their rate sheets around. You know what I mean? You go in your office, see them all over the place. I try to give programs out as opposed to rates. I didn't really want them calling me because of rates. You know what I mean? So I really concentrated on making sure the products, I had something different. If it was an affordable housing program or something new was with FHA, or we were doing a no closing cost or something like that. Try to concentrate on some sort of a flyer like that.
Well, for
something different.
For the listeners here, I think it kind of, especially anybody who's going to listen to 10 or 15 different interviews, what comes across loud and clear is that the loan officers who are very successful in this business really almost despise rate sheets. That rate sheets are not where it's at. It's in selling yourself and in selling programs.
Right.
And
I mean, it's so true. I mean, rate sheets are just, if they're calling you because of your rate, someone's going to beat your rate. If someone wants to beat your rate, someone's out there going to beat it. And that's not what I want. I want to make sure they're calling because of my program. I'll sell the rate later. You know what I mean? That's the last thing I want them to call me about. So, and you're right. Selling yourself is another key. Knowing what you're talking about, having a good demeanor when you're walking in, and and having a good, being able to converse with somebody very well is also very good too. And
did you have any particular methodology for remembering people's names? And like I used to use a shoebox and have cards that I would pull out and even write physical descriptions. And when their picture appeared in the paper, I'd cut it out and put it on it, and build up a file. Do you have any particular methodology you use?
Basically, what I do, I have those card holders that fill your they're card holders. I must have 7 of these things that I've got. Everyone I've ever dealt with, I still have their card, going back from the first day I was in this thing. And I must have at least 7 of them that I can put people's cards in, and I write down what office they're from. I write their first name, if they have a nickname, that kind of thing. I put it down, write it down, so I don't go in and call him Michael if he likes to be called Joe or something. You know what I mean?
It's a fatal error in this business. Some of the things in these interviews get covered over and over, but it really is a fatal error in this business to call somebody by the wrong name.
Exactly. There's no question about it. So, yeah, I mean, you're right. There is a little bit of a filing system I do have. But again, now me being in this business long enough, I have a core people I deal with now. And again, I'm so busy with them people that I have not really had a chance to go after other new people. I mean, it's good to have that.
Sure.
But you're right, though. I mean, having a name to go with a face is very important.
With the realtors, was that the core? And as I say, I want to stay in the box for just a little bit here.
Sure.
The realtors, were they your core market when you were starting?
Oh, absolutely. There was no question about it. Because you remember when I came into this business, I was green. I had no contacts. I didn't know any realtors. I didn't even know that they even could give you business. So So yes, I was after the realtors every day of 7 days a week, and I would always make sure that I was accessible to them. They could call me on a weekend, anytime, weekend, weeknight. It didn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Even today, still, I still, you can call me anytime, page me anytime. And I pagers on 24 hours a day. So I made sure that I was accessible to them at any time. It didn't matter what day. I mean, Sunday. I mean, I used to come.
Mm-hmm.
I used to come home, have dinner, get paid, and drive back up to Niagara County, which is about 30 miles from here, because someone wanted to get pre-approved.
Mm-hmm. I think realtors. I know when I was doing what you did, long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the accessibility really counts for a lot. And those of you that are new, that are listening to this, it's important. And I think the reason it's important is that realtors are kind of funny people, and I don't necessarily mean that in a good sense all the time, because if a realtor, even one that likes you, all of a sudden they can't get you on a deal for whatever reason, they can kind of overlook it if you have a good relationship. They could even overlook it 2 or 3 times. But there does come a time when they can't get hold of you, when they have kind of internally had enough, and all of a sudden they're now calling their new guy on the list or new woman, and all of a sudden that person is accessible. So I think being accessible has a price, but for if you want to have longevity in this business, you better be accessible.
You want to be successful. And I've been in this 7 years, and I am accessible. I mean, yesterday, just to give you an example, I was here on a Saturday, my daughter's birthday. I helped them set up for this birthday party. I got a page from a realtor, and I actually was trying to save the deal. She had sent it through her own company, that they have their own mortgage company. Because obviously, I tell these people that I'm in that I don't want all the pie. I just want a piece of it. That's what I usually tell a lot of these realtors. And I understand that they give you pressure and you have to send them. Well, this deal was falling apart. And I saved the deal. I went over and took the guy out in the middle of the day. I went over to his house and took a loan in the middle of the day. Now, a lot of people wouldn't even answer their page on a Saturday. Again, I answered the page. I got a deal out of it. And I know I'll be able to get this loan through. So, again, accessibility, going back to that, is very important.
Let me just ask them because we don't ever want to get into anything proprietary to your company here, but or to an individual. But why was this deal falling apart specifically, without names? And what did you do to put it back together?
Basically, what happened is this was an investment property, a 4-unit investment property, that they quoted him an interest rate of a certain interest rate plus some points. They've got to the commitment phase, and the deal changed. For whatever reason, I have no idea. Their deal changed drastically. Rate was up, points were even higher, and the guy was very upset. And the realtor called me and said, "Can you help this guy? Do you have a program? Do you have anything that you could offer this guy at a lower type interest rate, or something that was close to?" And actually, the original deal the guy had, I beat the original deal. And the guy was so happy, and the realtor called me to thank me for saving this deal for her. And I've done deals with her before, but not a lot. And then this is going to go a long way, believe me. I'm going to be all over this one. So that's basically what was the problem on it. The problem was the interest rate and the points that they had quoted him originally changed by the time he got committed. And I don't know how that.
How can that happen if you? I don't know what you're.
I asked the same question to her, and she says that they were skating. The company was skating around this for I think he ran out of time or something. I don't know. I think he expired or something like that. And he was in process for over 2 months or something like that, and it expired.
The quote expired.
Yeah, the quote expired, and it was a real mess. And he was very unhappy. He was going to just get out of the deal and just. I mean, the deal was just going to end. He was just going to sign off on it and just move on. You know what I mean? Unless he got something similar or lower, which she called me on a whim yesterday, just panicking. And then the guy actually lived down the street from me, and I saved the deal for her. So that will go a long way with her and me. I'm supposed to meet with her next week. I already set up a lunch with her.
What do you do in today's environment with realtors, understanding that realtors don't always control the deal as well as they used to with the Internet, for one thing? We'll talk about that later. But what do you do to hold those realtors in? It's a market where you have a lot less loyalty than you did in my time, certainly, and even when you started. It's much colder.
Yes. to hold the realtors is, again, like you said, it's getting more difficult. A lot of the mortgage companies, that are, at least in my area, and I'm not sure around the rest of the country, but a lot of the mortgage companies in my area own their own mortgage company, and it's getting increasingly more difficult. They are pressuring their realtors incredibly to take their deals to their own mortgage company. I'm running into it more and more every year.
Well, for whatever it's worth to you, this is happening all over the country. It's certainly not up in your area. Mm-hmm. And it's a very subtle type of pressure,
right?
Because legally they can't steer somebody.
Sure.
But there's all sorts of subtle ways to do it.
I mean, they bring them in the office. I mean, I just had a realtor that I was up in Lewiston, up in one of my offices, and I was in there doing a pre-approval, and I got 3 or 4 little agents that give me a lot of deals, and they were saying, "Listen, Gary, they're pressuring us unbelievable. Why does everything go to you, and why don't they give it to their rep?" And actually, the next day after I was gone, they brought their rep in, saying that we can beat my products, just me personally. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they brought her in just to talk about me against her, through all their office or all their agents. It was incredible. They called me and said, "Gary, you're not gonna believe what you did." The office manager brought in the rep and their company against you. And it was just unbelievable. It's getting that competitive now.
Well, I think this is I find this interesting. I find this incredibly interesting. Not because I'm surprised at it. I'm not surprised at all. But I think that a lot of listeners out there that right now, as they're listening to this, are shaking their heads in agreement that they run into this. And so, my real question to you is, what do you do to overcome this type of situation, which I'm sure you run into all the time?
Yeah. What I try to do is, again, I tell these people, I go, especially my real, I said, "Listen, these people, I know you're getting pressure from them." I said, "But you got to understand, do they pay you a salary? No." I said, "Do I do a good job for you?" Yes. They like me. I do a good job. I follow up well. I get things done quickly. I stay in contact with my people, and that's what they want. And I try to reiterate. I said, that's going to continue with you. As long as you stay with me, that will continue. You know you're getting pressure from your manager on this stuff. I said, this stuff will continue with me. I don't know what you're dealing with over there with this person. I don't know why would you want to take a chance. I said, I'm here for you for anything you need to do. So that's what I try to reiterate and stay in contact with them, because if you stop getting in contact with the people you do most of your business with, they will eventually send their business somewhere else. That's like out of sight, out of mind. So you have to keep in contact with the people you do business with.
So ultimately,
phone call, stopping in the offices, whatever you have to do, stay in contact, or else they will waver.
Do you do anything, once again, with realtors outside of the office and to get business, like maybe visit homes they're sitting on? Do you have any other special tricks up your sleeve that you use that works well?
Well, a lot of times, once in a while, I'll do open house. Open houses, I mean, though they probably don't work all that great, but it shows that you're interested in the realtor, that they've got to sit out there for 3 hours on an open house. At least they got, if you're in there with them, you're taking time out of your day. Even though it may not get you anything, but it's getting you with that realtor alone, talking for a couple hours with them and a sit like that. It's a good way to get into a realtor. I mean, if you see someone who's having an open house, sometimes I'll just call and say, "Listen, I got open house sheets, and do you want me to sit in with you?" And a lot of times they will do that. Mm-hmm. So again, that's another little trick of getting into a realtor. If you look in the home finders, whatever you got in your area, or the offices when you got someone who's going to be doing an open house, it's a great way to get into that realtor and be one-on-one with them for a few hours.
Do you do any teaching at all for what do you do with new realtors coming in? How do you try and get them?
New realtors,
because they're, in a sense, I'll tell you where I'm coming from. They're very vulnerable, and I mean that in a good sense, because they are willing to, there's a certain loyalty. They're willing to attach yourself when they're not so hard and calculating, years later.
Mm-hmm. New realtors, again, they're a group that you probably have to get to right away, because they've probably been already talk to about who they're going to send their business to, especially if they got a mortgage company all set up. So again, what I try to do with any type of a new realtor is I try to get them out on a lunch or something. I'll try to get them one-on-one somehow, bring them out to lunch, welcome to their office, to this new office that they're in, and maybe take them out to lunch and try to go through my little spiel how I can help them in their business. So that pays what I try to do on new ones. And sometimes, though, if I can, I'll go to the manager. If they'll let me in the office, certain offices will let you in, and say, listen, if I could take just your new realtors, you know, on a night or an evening or whatever that I can get to them all, and just kind of go through what I can do for them as a mortgage company, and get them all in a sit for an hour or something like that. I've done that before.
Mm-hmm. Do you do any formal instruction at all?
No, I don't.
Mm-hmm. No. That's okay. Not everybody's all things to all people.
Right, right.
What do you do on dealing with realtors? Do you do any kind of mail-outs or send flowers? Anything that you might think you're overlooked, but that you do to create that relationship?
No, I really don't do mailings anymore. When I first started, I thought they were very important to get your name out there, but I just didn't see that. I just didn't get anything out of it because I just feel that a mailing is something they can just throw out. I just didn't think it was any good. You have to meet them. You have to get in front of them. That's the only way you're really going to get business. I mean, I just didn't believe in mailers. I still don't.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't think it's a good tool. It's just not a way of getting business. It's just something they could look at and throw out. They never look at it anyway. That's just my feeling. It's me talking to people out there. Do you look at this? So they don't even look at this stuff. You know, it's just something they got to open and throw out.
They're kind of like rate sheets.
Exactly.
Sure.
I see people in my office doing mailings, and I just think a waste of time and effort. How about getting out there, sitting at your desk for 2 days, putting the thing together, and then mailing it out? You know, you probably would have done more getting out to the office. Right.
I think there's it's something that we don't talk about in your business, but you've kind of inadvertently brought it up, and that is, I think there's a segment of loan officers out there that are not particularly successful. And one of the reasons that they're not successful or they're mediocre is the fact that I think deep down they get intimidated.
Sure.
Because it's a rejection business. You're going out there getting your brains beat up.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of people that don't give you deals, even people you have relationships with who don't give you deals.
Right.
And loan officers can get, certainly early on, they can get very intimidated. Right. And even later on, it's very frustrating. We all have those days when you call in 3-4 realtors and just nothing bounces your way.
Right.
And I think that's one of the hidden problems in our business. As I do these interviews, I'm going to start focusing on it a little bit more. But you've really kind of brought that up, that indirectly, that you've got to get that face time. You've got to get out there, look them in the eyeball, and even if they tell you no or get the hell out of here, you're at least they're going to remember your face.
Right. I agree.
Well, let's kind of. So I think we beat this subject up pretty good. Let's kind of switch to outside the box. I think there's a lot of interest, and especially since refinances have kind of
dried up. Yeah.
They've truly dried up, and because of that, and interest rates have gone up, and so there's new products being offered out there rather than the 30-year fixed. I'd like to focus on, you mentioned probably 5 or 6 groups, from CPAs to attorneys to people that you get indirectly business.
Sure.
But I'd like to segment it, and I would like to know, let's start off with CPAs, on how you got your business from CPAs, how you go about it, and just what you do. And then I'd like to go down each different group and do that, because there's an enormous amount of listeners that listen to this, and they're trying to pick up the hints to go after business that's out there, and they really kind of, I think, sit at their desk sometimes just wondering, where is this business?
Right.
In fact, the matter is it's right in front of them. But
sure.
Let's talk about CPAs.
I think CPAs are great, great place to start when you're looking for new business, because you got to remember when someone's going to a CPA, they're putting out their entire financial, their whole financial life to this person, and they're suggesting ways of cutting costs, cutting, their savings, all kinds of different things. And a lot of ones, if they have a home equity and they have a mortgage and they've got, all these credit cards out there, you know what I mean? I mean, and even though no rates are rising, I get calls from CPAs because right now it's tax time, and So I said to myself when I first got in this, what other way? There's other business out there. I used to contact these people and go to lunch with them. I mean, sometimes we just go call right out of the book and call a CPA that's in my area. Or right now, I got major firms that I deal with, CPA firms that are in the Buffalo area, big firms that I deal with, that I do lunches every so often with, just to make sure that I'm there, keep my face there. But CPAs are a great way of getting business because, again, even though rates are rising at this time, there's a lot of people out there that have their financial pictures just in terrible disarray. And to get that back in the fold where they have to be, a lot of times a mortgage comes in, if they have a house with a low mortgage or something, but they've got other things that they could combine it into one, or refinance it all into one payment and save themselves a ton of money. That's a great opportunity. I mean, the rates don't really matter that much when you're rolling in a lot of stuff, like credit cards, high interest type credit card debt. You've got mortgages or other mortgages, maybe it's the same interest rate, but if you're rolling everything else in at 24% interest rates, and also at home equity rates that are, sometimes go up to 15 to 16%, it's advantageous to take something around at 8.5% or 8.375 rate at this time and roll it all into one, and save themselves a lot of getting more cash flow, I guess, as you would call it. So the CPAs are a great avenue of getting new business. And again, to get into those, you really got to be able to, either if you don't know them, you're going to have to do some cold calling, I believe, like I did. And that's the way you get into them.
So I think that's the point I take away. That you just got to get the book out, and you got to go do it.
There's just no other way, really, to be honest with you, because there's no other avenue unless you know somebody to get you in the door. The only other way you're going to do is either go on and knock on their door, or call and try to set up some sort of a meeting or a luncheon or something like that.
Right. I tell people when I used to train some time back that it's a rejection. We're in a rejection business. That's the bad part. But there's a comma after that sentence or statement, and the comma is that it's a rejection business, but it's never personal. It's not that when someone rejects you, it's not because they, except in the rarest of cases where they don't like you or your personality, it's because you don't have the program, or they're dealing with someone else they like better. But it's not a personal rejection, and I think people can find some solace in that if you're going to call on CPAs, maybe 8 out of 10 are going to beat your brains up and you're not going to get through, but there's going to be 2 out there.
If you stay persistent, that 10th one will hit.
Let's switch over to attorneys.
Okay. Attorneys, again, it's lucky for me to deal with attorneys because we're in a big firm. HSBC Mortgage is huge around the country now. We're a big mortgage company now, and we have a lot of attorneys. I mean, not only was HSBC was formerly Marine Millen, which has been in this town in Buffalo area for over 150 years. So there's a lot of attorneys affiliated with this bank. So what I did, and I'm not sure everyone could do this, but I would pick out a couple of the firms that closed mortgages for us. That's what I first did when I first got in this business. I again, having wanted to go outside the box, would contact those firms that I wanted to do business with. I mean, and a lot of the people who were there years never even contacted any attorneys. You know what I mean? They would just not do that. And I would say, well, this is crazy. If they're doing business with us, if we're giving them, $450 to close a loan for us, there's got to be an opportunity maybe to send business back to me. If I could just set up, if I could put them down as my attorney for most of my deals, I said, there's got to be an opportunity for them to be able to send business back to me. So that's what I did. I have like 2 or 3 firms that I deal with exclusively, that I funnel my business to give me business back all the time. And it was good for me to have the opportunity because these people have affiliated with us for years, and we give them not just mortgage business, but there's a lot of other business they get through the bank on commercial side and whatever. I was lucky enough that there was a big relationship there that I actually called, sat down with them, had a lunch and that kind of thing with them. What about
attorneys that do not do business with your firm? What would you recommend for loan officers to deal with them?
I do have a few of those too, believe it or not, because some of them just are too little to get on our attorney list. There's so many on them now that for them to get on our list is almost impossible these days. So, but I have a lot of attorney friends that do still send me business, because they know I'm going to do a good job for them. You know what I mean? But again, yeah, it really having the attorneys sending me business that weren't on our list were more people that I knew, that I had acquaintances with already, and that's really it's a tough one. That was a tough one.
What about some people normally, if they deal outside the box, they're going to talk about CPAs and attorneys.
Sure.
Are there any other groups though that you have found favor with? Whatever.
Financial planners is another one as well. Again, CPAs are really accounting people, so they don't really get into their financial picture as much as
Good point.
they do. But financial planners are planning out a lot of things. For college, for instance. I mean, a financial planner, if you're planning for college, and I mean, I just had one good example 2 days ago. A couple, probably in their around 50 years old, had a child going to college. Had a very low mortgage. Had like a $40,000 mortgage, had a $170,000 house. Want to know how they're going to pay for their child's college? Financial planner calls me, and I had a meeting with him, the financial planner, the four of us. Went in the office and went over what they could do to try to finance this. And what we did was took out as much as we could cash out and gave it to the financial planner to invest while she was in college, so they would pay her tuition out of that money, and he's earning interest or whatever he was doing on that money. That's what we basically ended up doing. So again, financial planners are a great source. And again, getting into financial planners is again another way, a cold calling type business. I've got like 3 or 4 of them that I started out when I first started. I called on the phone and said, I want to meet with you. I got an opportunity to be able to do things for your customers if they, if they're looking for kind of things like this, like I just said, like the college and things like that nature, or trying to restructure things.
I have an observation, a quick observation on your comments with regard to financial planners, and that I think our listeners out there can appreciate, at least hopefully they can, and that is when you're talking about getting on the phone and actually being able to get somebody that's interested in talking to you, that's a financial planner and, is degreed and has accreditation. I find that kind of extraordinary, and the reason I do is that it indicates to me that there are a lot of professionals out there, and not just financial planners, that just aren't getting hit. They're not getting solicited.
They're not. There really is. There's a major opportunity for people who are in this business to go after to get referrals from other sources. There's so many different ways, and so many different like professional organizations and things of that nature as well. I don't get into a lot of those things. There's some people in my office who do get into those kind of things, but like a tip group, they call it, where they meet, once a month or something like that, about referrals, that kind of thing. There's those kind of ways to get different types of business, outside the box, call it, that I've seen people in my office go after, get involved with those groups. I mean, not only that, I'm very involved with my church. I mean, I get a lot of business out of my church, believe it or not. I mean, there's bulletins on the back where I got my ad on the back of the bulletin, and I get, I'm involved in going over there, and there's a ton of people in my church that I do business with, and it's word of mouth. Just when you do one thing and you do another, I tell you, there's so many different ways to get business. Other than realtors, it's out there. You just got to go after it.
Well, you're the first one to bring up the church part, but it's kind of funny. And I belong to a small church, and I belong to big churches, but belong to a small church. And in our church bulletin, they put one out every week. At the end of it, there are always a couple people there. There's a guy that does general repairs. There's a mortgage person, and let's see, there's 2 realtors. I can almost tell you who they are because I look at that thing every day, and they put ads in every single week, and I have to believe...
Right, if you're a parishioner and you're looking to do something, you want someone you can trust, and they're part of your parish, believe me, they're going to come to you.
There's a natural inclination.
Absolutely, and there's no doubt about it. So another good way of trying to get some other business. Absolutely.
Any other ways that you have, any other little tricks of people outside the box that you deal with? Although I think you've covered the major groups, certainly. Don't
underestimate family and friends.
Okay.
Believe me, family and friends are a huge source of my business. I can't tell you how many referrals I get from from family and friends. It's incredible. I really do. I know a lot of people in this area. I'm pretty well connected with people in this area. So, I mean, I just say the better job you do on a file. I mean, I get a lot of business from repeat customers, and people doing. If I do a good job for that customer, and if their company that they work for is a large organization, and you do a great job on their loan and get it done without any hassles, believe me, they talk. And, if someone else is buying a house, I can't tell you how many deals I get from that one person telling this other person what a great job I did. Next thing I'm getting a call to do a pre-approval or something like that. I mean, it's amazing the repeat business you get from current customers or them talking to other people in their organization.
Do you know that in the life insurance business, it's almost a religion that when someone is new in the life insurance business, the first thing they do, it must be written on some 10 Commandments somewhere in that business, the first thing they do is sit that young kid down, a woman, and they have them write a list of
family
the 20 people, absolutely, and then they hold them to it. They just, because the theory is, get out there and sell your, mom, Sally, sister, brother, and everything, and then if you can leap beyond that, great. If not, they at least get a couple deals in, on you from doing that. So there's certainly validity in doing these things.
Well, another tip I can give you also, that every time I leave, when I do a mortgage application, when I leave that application, I give them an extra card. I always say, if you know anyone else in the business or looking for a home, we're looking to refinance, here's an extra card. Please refer them to me. You can't get the business unless you ask. That's another thing.
Well, that's a good point. I'd like for you to expand on that because there's, it's sometimes the simplest things that even old timers have been around a while start to forget.
So it's a great way when I leave my applications. And that's why I get a lot of different business. I think from other people. Some people just coming out of the blue, and I think it's because of that. Because if you don't ask for the business, you're not going to get it. The same thing with realtors. A lot of people, you'll talk to someone and give them your programs, and okay. But if you actually say to the person, listen, if your next deal, give me a try, or let me try your next deal. You got to ask for it. I remember when first starting out, that I wasn't getting a lot of business because I wasn't asking for it. I felt like once I started to ask for the business, I started to get it. So that's something I think they should take in hand is to make sure that they ask for the business. If you don't ask for it, you're not going to get it.
It's funny that it's something that's so profound and it's so in your face, and all of us, I think, at times we just kind of overlook. Whether I had a woman yesterday I was interviewing, and she was talking about, and it's not the first time I've heard it, where she was putting her picture at Safeway. On the grocery carts, and then I talked to someone else who goes into grocery stores, for the normal shopping or the hair, and they always, see people there all the time, and they just give that card out. Even the checker at the counter, someone was telling me they got a deal a couple of weeks ago. They're talking to the counter, and they gave him a card, and I said, well, it's funny, my wife and I are looking for a home over in the Bethesda area, and sure enough, they ended up doing the deal for him.
Really?
Someone that you would, kind of tend to actually overlook.
Right, exactly.
Well, Gary, that wraps it up. We're out of time. I want to thank you for your time.